How often do you measure your self-worth based off of the way that you look, your accomplishments, or what you do for others? Today, we're going to be talking about something much deeper, and that is your inherent self-worth and what it truly means to step into your power. Big one.
Big one.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I can relate to with this, is my life, but is the early stages of when I started dating my husband. And so I'm Canadian, my husband is American. And when we started dating and I moved right on, man, moved in with him, I had to move to the US. And so legally I could not work. And so I was literally a stay-at-home girlfriend for such a long time now.
And you always worked your whole life, mind you.
Very hard, multiple jobs, constantly. Like I was, most of the time I was working like 2 and 3 jobs at a time. And so it was such a massive identity shift for me and like life altering experience. And it was so challenging. I would still take on projects and I would still do courses and I was still like trying so hard to make something and do something for myself because of this constant feeling of, oh my gosh, I hold no value. Like now that I'm in quotations, just a stay-at-home girlfriend, I hold no value. And I think that what I didn't realize was that my identity was so linked to, like we've talked about in so many other episodes, my productivity, my like what I was able to bring to the table. And I think that I took so much value away from what I did bring to the table, which was like managing the house, doing the household duties and all of these things. But as someone who always placed my value on what I contributed in so many other ways, it was incredible. It felt crippling, honestly, for so many years.
I think that's a really great way to preface into this episode and kind of what's to be expected and to really set the framework that self-worth isn't something that can be earned. It's something that is really recognized. And in order to live in that truth, it requires a lot of unlearning, rewiring, and ultimately the most radical sense of self-acceptance, which is so much easier said than done. So without further ado, let's just jump right into this episode.
I know it's wrong, but I don't care.
So why do you feel we struggle so deeply with self-worth? Just like we're just going to talk from a female perspective at the moment. How is it and why is it that in today's day and age, self-worth is something that is so incredibly challenging to achieve?
I think we've addressed this lightly in the other episodes, but to dive a little bit further into it, I really feel like it's because we validate so much of our worth into external validations and external sources like productivity, what we do for others, how we show up in the world, what we look like these type of things.
Constant comparison.
How could you not? Like, especially based on who you follow.
And with social media, like social media is just detrimental.
Definitely external validation is a big marker for self-worth because you're kind of like looking to others to gain a perspective almost of yourself.
Yeah.
And that makes you reflect back onto your own self. Like, oh, they have things that I don't have. So maybe once I look like them, I'll get those things. And oh, once I act like that, or once I make certain amount of money, then I can have these things and feel these types of way. And I feel like the biggest thing I see or feel, or maybe even had personally experienced in my early 20s was like, once I lose the weight, then I'll get the validation or attention, which ironically, because we're programmed a lot of the times like this, like I had experienced that in myself. Like when I had an eating disorder in my early 20s, getting the attention and getting that validation and being like, oh, I'm worthy now of these guys' attention that I would have never had before.
Right.
And that felt good. So yeah, definitely external, to answer your questions, external validations is one of them.
Constant comparison.
And comparison would be another one. Yeah.
And I feel like this extremely innate feature within us of people pleasing
and overgiving
and people pleasing. I mean, the people pleasing nature that is within us often, and that feeling of having to overgive constantly in order to feel like you hold value is so detrimental to our self-worth. And I really do believe that our self-worth isn't and should not be tied to this constant external validation. And we really need to bring it into internally. So without the people pleasing, without the social media comparison, without the constant need to be productive in order to obtain value, believe that you are valuable just as you are.
Yeah, I feel like a really tough question, because one of our best friends was actually telling us that she was asked this question recently, and it was surprisingly hard to answer. And I was thinking about it myself. I'm like, if I was asked this question, how would I answer? And it's very difficult, because without the titles, like your titles, like mother, wife, sister, entrepreneur, whatever it
daughter,
daughter. And without the accomplishments that you've had over the years, like, who are you? You know,
are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Or is that
what would you say? Well, that was a question she was asked, but also I'm asking you, because how would you answer?
Well, I mean, I feel like now at this age and stage in my life, I do feel like I can answer that. But if you had asked me 10 years ago, I think it would have been extremely challenging. And I probably would have given a very fluff answer.
Okay, do it then and now.
Like, I'm a fun girl, you know?
You are a fun girl.
I'm nice. And I feel like who I am now, like outside of I'm a mom, outside of I'm a wife, outside of I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an incredibly spiritual being. I am energy and I am light. I am the vibration that I want to see in the world. I am strong beyond what I ever believed could be. So I think that I've only been able to realize those things about myself and grasp the concept of who I am underneath all the titles because of all the work.
Mm-hmm.
Because of all the work that I have done and put into myself and my growth and my deep understanding of myself.
Okay, well, let's say you're somebody who hasn't done the work and the growth and the deep understanding. Like, where would you even start? Like, what are the type of things?
Very practical daily practices. Literally looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, who am I? What brings me joy?
Do you think it even has to be like a daily thing, or even just like a once in a while thing?
Once in a while, of course. I mean, any degree of self-reflection is going to change and impact the way that your brain works and the way that you see and think about yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, sometimes people have like an epiphany and that changes everything. Sometimes people put it into daily practice and the consistency changes things.
Right. Or sometimes you go through something very big, deep, traumatic in your life, and how you tune in and choose to respond to that thing is going to totally curate a part of who you are as a person and as a soul on this planet.
Yeah. I feel like one of the first things you can do to start cultivating a little bit more of awareness around self-worth is to detox from external validation and really notice when you're kind of seeking that approval.
Like, so are you addicted to likes? Are you addicted to likes on your posts?
Well, that's a huge thing for me, because personally, for a
dopamine hit.
For a few years ago, when I was like really going through this life transformation and kind of self-worth journey, probably like a year or two before I had my first baby. And I was kind of like in a career shift, or just really trying to define what it is I wanted to do. And, you know, my past and my history has always been about makeup and tutorials and like the beauty industry in terms of like non-toxic self-care swaps, and really just trying to offer education and solutions for women. And there's so much emphasis in my life on beauty.
External beauty.
Although there still is. The industry keeps growing and growing and growing. Yeah. But it was really like how I connect to the expression of myself, and every post and everything that I would put out there was very intentional. And a lot of it was like selfies and kind of selling the way you look and how the makeup works and giving reviews and tutorials. And I just felt very pigeonholed in that kind of definition of like just physical and beauty. Yeah. And it's interesting because I've grown and veered from that focus of like that being my niche, even though it is a lot of time and knowledge and interest spent in that area. And now where I'm at, I find that if I'm posting something, I have to be a little bit, not have to be, but I am a lot more conscious and aware of the intention behind the post. Because if I'm like posting a selfie, I find myself almost looking at it more to see who's looking at it, to see the response I'm getting, because it goes beyond just like making an affiliate recommendation and sale and helping somebody, but it's also like, this is the attention I'm receiving from the way I'm looking. And it just raises those questions and that consciousness around the intention behind why we're doing what we're doing. So for me, really acknowledging where I'm laying my worth in external validation was a huge wake up point for me. And comparison was massive because I was following competitors or following people that inspired me. But I found myself more often than not, like feeling like I wasn't enough because I wasn't as good as them or making enough likes as them or as much traffic. And that's when I really had like a social detox and really made that conscious decision to decide maybe it's in my best interest that I don't see what anybody's doing, so I can allow my own creative freedom in my own mind to see what it thinks of. Right. So I started
what's genuinely important to you and what you find value in.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'm going to go on social media and I'm going to scroll, but I have the decision too to see who I expose myself to. So I remember making a vivid decision to make a social detox where it's like, people are like, oh, I'm off social media for a week and it was great, but I can't wait to go back on and look again and see what everybody's up to. But it's almost like if you curate who it is you look at and what you look at, your algorithm will not only align with that, but you'll also start to expose your brain to those.
It's so funny that you say this because I was just on the phone with my aunt yesterday and she was saying like her business is booming. She's in the financial industry. She's, you know, whether we want to admit it or not, she's a woman in a man's world. Like she's one of the very few women that's very big in her industry. And she was just saying to me, like, she is so inundated with work. She works so many hours a week. She is completely consumed by her business. And when she lays in bed at night and scrolls on Instagram, it's her safe space. Like it brings me so much peace and joy because I've been able to curate content on my feed that is literally only the stuff that like soothes my soul.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like
it's true.
How many people out there are going on social media and being like, I feel like refreshed and rejuvenated and healed in a way after scrolling for 30 minutes tonight. As opposed to being like, oh, I feel like I'm not enough, or I feel like I have to work harder, or I feel like I have to go to the gym more, or make better meals, or, you know, get a new outfit, or change my makeup and my hair.
Think about how often that subconscious or maybe even conscious thought that people have is that I'm not enough because you're comparing, versus how often do we like put ourselves in a situation to actually ask ourselves the opposite of why am I not enough, or how can I look more like this person and get what they get? And look at yourself and say like, what am I actually proud of in myself? What do I feel?
And change the script.
Yeah, change
the script from I'm not good enough and comparing yourself to others to I am inherently worthy.
Yeah.
My soul was placed on this earth because I am worthy of this life. Period.
Totally.
Period.
It's such like to me, it's relatable thought process and content because I've been on both sides of the spectrum. Like, I feel like the only reason I'm really at this point in terms of the way I'm starting to think for myself and about myself is because I've been on the depths, on the deep end, and like
right
in that whole mental trap and everything. Like I said at the beginning of this, like literally being in an eating disorder because
me too.
Like,
we were in it together,
and just like having the way I look be a big part of my worth, and being in an industry for so long all about visual beauty.
Same. I mean, I worked in the service industry for what?
You get hired because of the way you look, you know?
12 years. And all that mattered was how I looked.
I remember when we worked at Moxie's, I remember our manager, one of them, the bald guy.
Yes.
I was,
not
you weren't
say
there,
his name, but yes.
I was working as a host and people come in and like drop off their resumes all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they drop off the resume to me because I was at the front of the host. So I would have to bring them back to the manager where they were usually in the back kitchen. So I remember vividly this one time a girl came in and gave me her resume, and I walked to the back and I was like, oh, hey, like somebody's here to drop off a resume. They were really interested in working here. He takes the resume, he like looks at it, and he like is kind of like looking past to see if he could see
the girl
at the front. And he's like, which one is she? And I was like, oh, she's a brunette. And he was like, looked at her for a second and said, no. And then just passed me back the paper. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like that was such a staple moment in my mind, being like, wow.
How about when we worked at Hollister? If when you applied to work at Hollister, they would call you a model.
Oh my God.
If you worked in the front to where people could see you.
Yeah.
And you were called a
impact
in
the back.
If you worked in the back.
You had to stay in the back.
And you had to stay in the back. You were not allowed on the floor. You were not allowed out of that fucking warehouse storage area room. And so we would go on our little walkie-talkies and be like, I need a size 24, whatever, to Betty's one. So they would get it ready for you and set it on the counter in the back so that you could come back as a model, in quotations, as a fucking model, go back there, get this item, and then bring it out to the guest.
Think about if you are the model perspective and you're young too, you're like, oh my God, I'm so important.
That was us. We felt like we were so special and so beautiful and so
accepted
and like valued because we were in the front. But how many friends did we have that applied for the same job and they were like, yep, you're impact. You're going to go in the back. We're going to keep you in the back. Terrible. Terrible, terrible.
And, unfortunately, that's just the reality of so many industries. It still happens in so many areas. Like I would say mostly
pretty privilege.
Pretty privilege.
It's a real thing.
It is a real thing. I love those trends on TikTok where they're like, pretty privilege. Wow, is pretty privilege real? And people share stories about like what they get and how they get that.
Yes.
So it's like, it's almost like, how do you not emphasize worth in validation in the way you look? Because you get that.
Of course. But I think that you need to enter the world with a perspective that is not related to that. So, so let's just say, so we live in a world that is very much like visually based, but I grew up as a funky looking kid. Like I did. I was kind of chubby. I had buck teeth. I had like big frizzy hair that I didn't know what to do with. I hit puberty when I was so young. It's shocking. I was huge when I was a little kid, and I was bigger than most of the boys most of my life. And so I always felt like boys didn't like me, but I never lacked confidence. I had I definitely had some self-worth issues. I ended up having an eating disorder because of all this and many other things, but I don't believe I ever lacked actual confidence because something happened along the way where my personality was so much more valuable to me.
Well, I think we're in a space together because for those of you guys who don't know, Brie and I met through dance when we were like 10, 11 years old. And in that space, we had a lot of, other than school, a lot of energy and attention focused into understanding your body, using creativity, using your imagination, coming up with a core group of friends that to this day we're still, a lot of us are best friends with. And finding parts of yourself that went beyond us, like a typical culture, even though dance is can be a very toxic environment in terms of like your body image and having to look a certain physique and way and perform and use your body as a tool.
I would literally get smacked in the belly. They suck it in. I'm like, I am.
I mean, to an extent, you have to like, dance is an art, right? So you have to like use your core to balance your body in certain ways. So you have to like use your body, learn how to use your body as a tool and a function, but it also performs. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. It also performs well when it's like controlled, and you have control when you connect to those body parts, and you can connect to those body parts when you're working on them. So that's a whole long conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like we've done a good job, like kind of exploring the differences and the identities of it all. But I feel like the real challenge is actually feeling that way. Because I feel like a lot of people, even myself, I'm like, yeah, positive thoughts, positive talk, I get it. But I don't actually feel that way. So if you're somebody like listening here and it's just like, okay, what do I do that actually can stick and implement as change? What are some very subtle, simple, effective ways you can do that, you think?
I mean, first and foremost, you have to believe that your confidence does not depend on others. Your confidence does not depend on others' opinion of you, others' view of you, others, even what you think they might be thinking of you. That is not where confidence stems from. It's got to be completely inward. So I feel like you have to go into your life every day not seeking approval. Like, who am I today without seeking approval? Again, much easier said than done.
Like you said earlier, it was almost like a fake it till you make it kind of vibe.
It is.
Which is why they say fake it, because it feels like you're faking it. It does.
Right. You're going to feel like, I cannot tell you how many times I've felt like an imposter. I cannot tell you.
I still sometimes feel like an imposter in certain areas, right?
Right now. In this freaking
like,
podcast
I have
world.
a podcast. Yeah. You're just starting a podcast.
We're doing it because you got to believe in yourself. Like, no one's going to cheer for you as much as you got to cheer for yourself.
I think a big jump off of what we just said about the podcasting too, for us, it's just like jumping into things before you're ready, like not waiting until you're in the state of perfectionism.
Totally.
And like thinking that you're worthy once you X, Y, and Z. Thinking that, like, for us in this state, like, we'll do a podcast when this. It's like, no, like we said, we're new here. We're starting it no matter what. We're going to say what we want to say because we enjoy having these conversations to each other, and we want to meet other women and other like-minded individuals who are interested in these topics.
Right. And I think that you can ask yourself, like, really start to ask yourself introspective questions. Doesn't have to be all the time, but just try. Just try it out and see what you come up with. Ask yourself, if I trusted my worth, what would I do differently? If I trusted my worth, what would I do differently?
That's almost kind of like saying, take away the once I lose this amount of weight, then I can wear these types of clothes. Once my face looks this way, then I can receive these benefits. Or
once I feel like this person likes me, then I'll feel complete.
XYZ.
Yeah.
Like, there's always kind of this, I don't know, trepidation, if that's like a right word or if it's even an English word. Of like,
it is an English word,
that this is going to be the end goal, that will be the solution. And that's almost kind of like this hustle worthy vibe that we were talking about previously. And like, this culture is like,
it's all about the journey, man.
All about the journey. It really is all about the journey. Because once you reach that destination,
then what?
Is it on to the next journey? And do you really sit and enjoy that accomplishment that you just had, or that goal? Because like for me, finishing my BFA was like I just finished it last year. And that was like 14 years into it.
13 years later.
14 years.
Reminds me of like the SpongeBob SquarePants.
13 years later.
13 years later.
Yeah, but for me, I was like, what do I need it for? I'm just enjoying my classes. And the older I got, the better marks I got. And I was like, ooh, this is a game. Yeah. But I was like, you actually got to choose the classes and things that you wanted to, and the teachers and things like that. But I was like, oh, once I'm done school, like, then I'll feel so much weight is lifted off me. I'll feel so free, and I'll feel like
so accomplished.
A big burden's off me, a huge thing. And I'm just like, I didn't even go to the graduation. I just like send it to me in the mail. And like, since it's been done, I'm like, there's been no real change in my life. Like, I feel nice that it's done, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, what's next? Like, what do I focus on? And it's always, I've always felt like this inherent having to catch up and like sense of worth in what I do, who I am, where I go, what I look like. And that is, it is like one of the hardest things I think to do, to separate from our roles. For sure. The roles that we play.
I feel like, and you know, again, this is only speaking from a woman's perspective, but I feel like especially for women, like we place our worth so much on how we look, who we take care of, what we produce, and how productive we are. And so, you know, there's no way we're the only ones that feel this. Yeah. I mean, we know that we're not, after talking to just our own small friend group. So we would love to hear from you guys. Like, what are your stories? Mm-hmm. When is a time that you felt, or maybe it's right now, like you cannot seem to gain a grasp on your self-worth, and how can we help you with that? Or maybe when is a time that you felt like you had an epiphany, or you had a moment, or you had a blip in your day where you did something, said something, spoke to someone, acted a certain way that gave you insight and like a breath of fresh air into your own value. And you were like, I feel fucking great about myself right now because I did this, because I set this boundary, because I didn't feel like I needed to shrink myself. And I don't think we actually like really talk about it that much, because it feels like bragging almost. Right. Don't be conceited. Of course not. Right. And it's so funny because even with your own friends, like you almost hold back a little bit too, because you want to fit all these amazing, beautiful ideals of like what a woman should be. Don't be too loud. Don't be too loud. Don't be too conceited. Make sure that you're giving, make sure that you're listening. And then also it's like being afraid of like what people say about you behind your back too. It's like, oh my God, all she does is talk about herself. But how can it come across in a way that it's encouraging somebody else? And that's why I'm like so curious to hear what you guys here have to say. And I also think that that's, again, just constantly trickling back to the same point. And we're going to do this over and over every episode. The reason we created this is to create that safe space. Yes. Is to create the safe space of women encouraging women, women supporting women, and women with open arms and open ears to be here to hold you, support you, and hear you and listen to you. So I think that, you know, whatever your experience is, you got a friend in me. Yeah. I think it's really good just to remember that it's a good thing to take up space. It's a good thing to be proud of yourself and to know what your worth is. And if it's something that starts off so small, whatever that looks like for you, that's why I'm so curious to hear what it is you have to say. So please connect with us on social media. We are on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, anywhere of the major platforms at the Honey Toast Podcast. We would love to hear from you. We would love to connect from you and see if anything from this episode resonated with you. And any of these points that Bria and I just said tonight, would love to have more of a conversation. So. And answer some of the questions for yourself. Yeah. Even if you don't want to send it in to us, even if you don't want to touch base with us based on these things, some of the questions we have lined up. When do you feel most worthy? That's a good question. A good one. Have you ever felt guilty for resting or slowing down? All the time. Yes. Every time. Yes. Every time. What's one way you've been dimming your light to make others comfortable? When was the last time you said no to protect your energy? That's a great one. I've gotten real good at that. Yes, you have. What would you do differently if you truly believed that you were already good enough? What would your life look like?
Great questions.
What's one small action that you can take this week to affirm your self-worth? Journaling, mirror work.
What would you do this week?
So what I have been doing actually already this week, Lily and I read this little book every night at bedtime, and it's called Where's the Owl? And there's these little like peekaboo flaps, and you're like, where's the deer? And you open it and there's the deer, and it's like, oh, they're playing hide and seek. But at the very end, the last page is like, and where are you? And you open it and it's a mirror.
Oh.
And so every night at bedtime, I say, okay, what are we going to say about ourselves? And then we go through things that we say about ourselves for the first time tonight. So Lily's like, I'm strong. I have big muscles. I'm brave. I'm amazing. I'm wonderful. And I'm like, yeah. And then she turned the book to me and she goes, okay, your turn, mommy.
Aww.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet. So then I got to look in the mirror and say these cute little things about myself. I was like, yeah, like I get my girls to do all these like affirmations.
Lead by example. Yeah.
And you know, back at our house in Alabama, I have the affirmation cards.
Yeah.
And so every morning they get to pick one and then they read it out loud and they have to repeat it twice. So like, I am confident, whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah, I should be doing a card myself and doing the mirror work myself. So
Lead
that's
by example.
Yes. So that's going to be my goal this week, is to do the mirror affirmations with Lily every night at bedtime with her little book.
I love that. Yeah. Mirror work is so powerful. I'm excited to get into mirror work.
It's hard.
Once we get into like beauty standards and stuff and those type of episodes, because it is so, think about how hard it is for some people just to look people in the eye when they talk to them, let alone your own eyes.
Yeah.
In the mirror.
Yeah.
That's fucking hard.
Yeah, it is. It is. So ladies, you've got this.
Which camera are you looking at?
That one.
This one.
Ladies, you've got this. Get out there and do something uncomfortable so that you can feel more comfortable in your own skin. Yeah. Do something uncomfortable so that you can feel more comfortable in the world.
Just feel more.
Do something uncomfortable so that you can be your truest, authentic self. Because at the end of the day, all the people and all the things and all the spaces that you've curated in your life not being your authentic self are worth nothing.
If you can't be your authentic self.
Yeah. You got this, ladies.
You got it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are so excited to talk to you next week. And we love you for being here. And I love you.
And I love you.
Honey toast.
Out.